Հանուն Հոր եւ Որդվո եւ Ոգուին Սրբո Amen. Բարի լույս, բարի եկած եք բոլորդ. Good morning. I'm happy to see all of you here today. St. Paul, in his second letter to the Corinthians, makes a revelation about himself. And he doesn't elaborate much. He says, I have received a thorn. I have a thorn. And when you explore the context, he says, I have received much revelations from God, but I have also received a thorn from God. So I remember the first time when I read about this, I was a seminarian, and I remember asking the priest who was going with us over this text, who was teaching us about this text, and I said, what was the thorn that St. Paul had? And jokingly, the priest said, Garzem topaler, I think he was lame. There was no reference anywhere that St. Paul was lame, but I think he was trying to be funny about it. And when I read more about St. Paul and trying to understand what was the thorn that he had on his body, because he says, I have a thorn on my flesh. So naturally you would think that he had something wrong with his body. I started discovering that there are some references where he speaks about other apostles who are well-spoken, who are better looking. And I remember reading somewhere, I don't remember where, that he was not comfortable with the way that he looked. And then most recently I read something about Paul that a scholar was trying to explain the thorn was his eyesight. He was struggling. He didn't see very well. That could have been his thorn. And for this reason, there are references in his letters where he says, now this part I am writing with my own handwriting, meaning that the rest of the letter he was dictating for somebody else to write, and that specific part he was writing, and his eyesight was not really the way that it was supposed to be. But if you ask me today, what was the thorn that Paul had? I would say his thorn was not physical. His thorn was spiritual. Because when you read the context where he speaks about that thorn, he says that I have received much revelation from God, but so that I may not boast above measure, I have also received a thorn. And the thorn, some scholars come to explain that it was the fact that maybe looking at his past, he couldn't forgive himself that he was someone who was persecuting the church. He was someone who was against Christianity. He was someone who did not belong in the circle of the 12. So these reasons were emotional and spiritual thorns that he was dealing with. And today's letter, which is from the first letter to the Corinthians, the reference to the thorn is found in the second letter to the Corinthians. In the first letter to the Corinthians, which Tony this morning proclaimed very well, good job guys, he speaks about our human condition, and he says the following: brothers and sisters, think of what you were when you were called. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many were influential. Not many were of noble birth. But God chose the foolish things of the world to shame the wise. God chose the weak things of the world to shame the strong. So he speaks about our human nature, and he reminds the readers of his letter that we all have weak human natures. But God, despite that weakness of our human nature, he chooses us, he works with us, because that is the nature of God, a loving and caring God. Now, so many people might have a problem with the way that this text is put. So many people say that maybe the reference here is for that early church. People who received the message of Christianity, and they were not influential people. They were not very strong people. They were the marginalized in the society. And we have overcome that. We have so many things to feel secure and good about ourselves. This may not apply to us. But I disagree. I will give you an example. A few weeks ago, we had our assembly in Detroit, and as I took the flight and I was coming back to New York, we boarded the plane, and when I found my seat on the plane, it was right in the middle, not my favorite place to be. And there were two people on each side, so when somebody had to get up to let me in. As I sat down, my habit is always to greet the people on my left and my right, to say hi to them before we board, but I do not engage in conversations. I don't like to talk to strangers. So as I said hi to the person who was sitting on my right, the gentleman greeted me and he said hi to me. I turned left, it was a young lady. I said hello to the young lady. The young lady did not respond to me. So I plugged my headphones and I started listening to my audiobook. And we flew. As we started approaching to LaGuardia Airport and as we were landing, we experienced some severe turbulence. And as the plane was shaking, this young lady turned to me and she did this to me. I don't know, she nudged me and she was like, "Are we dying?" I said, "No, we're landing." So she started making the sign of the cross and she started praying. So that moment where we kind of facing some fears in our lives, facing some insecurities in our lives, we all realize that we are weak and we need God. And today, the gospel, very short reading that our church fathers prescribed to us, we have the following. Jesus says, "Do not despise one of these little ones, for I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father in heaven." Jesus says, do not despise the little ones. Who are the little ones? I guess each and every one of us are considered a little child in the eyes of God. And each and every one of us, we have a thorn. When we think about ourselves, I can think about a handful, a dozen of things that are problems in my life. I try to work on them, I try to improve them, but I always find myself dealing and struggling with the same problems in my life. Those problems and those struggles are spiritual, are emotional. There are so many other problems in life, but I'm talking about the core ones, the real ones. And if each and every one of us is honest with themselves, they also will see that we all have thorns. And if we are people who are imperfect, who have our shortcomings, how then we dare to despise and to judge people who are struggling in their lives? This sounds like the right teaching, the sound teaching, and we all say, yeah, this is the right thing. But the reality is that in life, most of the time, this is not what we practice. We engage in behaviors, in conversations where we are judging, where we are condemning people around us, where not only we are despising, but we are showing our hatred. And this is something that Jesus is warning against. He's telling us that, my little brothers and sisters, all of you are like sheep. And just like sheep, all of you have the potential to go astray. but I am the shepherd, and you are valuable to me. If one of you goes astray, I will come after you. I will seek you, because the gift that I have for you is redemption. Despite the thorns that you have, my grace covers all shortcomings and makes you the genuine children of God. Սիրելի քույրեր եւ եղբայրներ, այսօր ավետարանի մեջ կգարտանք Հիսուսի արագը, հովիվին, որ ունի 100 ոչխարներ, եւ անոնց մեկը եթե գործվի, Հիսուս կսե, որ հովիվը գծկե 99 եւ գերտա եւ այդ մեկը կգտնե։ Այդ մեկ ոչխարը գրնանք ըլալ մեզ մե ամեն մեկս։ Այս արագի մեջ Հիսուս մեզի ցույց կտա թե ամեն մեկս իր աչքին կարևոր ենք, արժեքավոր ենք եւ ինքը պատրաստ է մեզի իդ հրավիրելու իր հոդի մեջ։ Այդ հրավերը շատ նուրբ հրավեր է։ Քրիստոս չի բարդացրել։ Հրավիրը մեզի, բայց մեր ազատ կամքն է, որ վերադառնանք իրեն կամ հերու մնանք իր փառախեն։ Իմ մաղթանքս եւ աղոթքս է, որ մեր ագանչները եւ հոգի սրտերը լավ բանանք, Աստծո ցայնը լսենք եւ հրավերին այո ասելով միշտ լանք Քրիստոսի մոտ, որուն օրհնությունը պիտի վայելենք բոլորս հավիդյանս հավիդենից ամեն